Hey there, it's Stephanie, and I wanted to do a little introduction before you start the interview with Maureen Pierce. I do want to say that this is a very heavy topic. Maureen was kidnapped as a child, so I just wanted to put that warning on there for you. We do discuss trauma, we discuss the kidnapping and some of the things that happened. She doesn't go into great detail or graphic, but I did want to give you a heads up here, especially if you have kiddos in the car with you, if you are listening to this on audio or even at your house and have video and watching it on YouTube. So, but I do encourage you to listen or to watch this episode because her stories amazing, and it is by the grace of God that she is here and able to share it with us today. Look forward to getting your feedback on the interview with Maureen Pierce.
Hey, friends, welcome to the Only God podcast. And today I have my friend Maureen Pierce, who also goes by Mo, if you know her personally. And welcome, Maureen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so grateful that you're here today. And just share a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I live in Atlanta. Married to Todd. This October 30th, will be 26 years. We have four boys. Our oldest, Nick, graduated from University of Georgia. And then we have Sean, who's a junior at Auburn, and our freshman identical twins, Matt and Jake, are also at Auburn. They
Oh,
just started.
I love that. So now you are kind of an empty nester. You've got one out of college and three in college. That's
Yes.
so cool.
Thanks.
I would love. I always have everybody share. Like how did we met? Our only God connection.
Yes, we met in 2021.
I think so.
I had I lost my dad October 30th of 2020, which happens to be our anniversary, mine and Todd's anniversary. So my mom was always like, "Oh, I'm sorry Jerry passed." And now I think of it as he chose a special day. But after that, it's just I've grieved before and lost people before, but I found myself just really struggling and knew that I needed something. I needed to work on me. And I think for so long, as many people, but many women do, it was all about my boys and everyone else. And I think I realized I need to work on myself a little bit. I'm struggling here for many reasons, personally, and grief, and how that was affecting me, even through some other friendships. And I was just so I start looking for something, and I had just finished Jesse's book, Living with a Seal, and I just Googled something, and he had a group, and I started originally, in a I think he had like a Zoom call type thing,
Yeah,
right?
30
30
days of
days.
excellence, maybe.
30 days of excellence. It was
Yeah,
something before that, but 30
yeah.
days of excellence type thing. And then we were able to do kind of the smaller group thing. And that's where I met you. And I could just, the minute I met you, like your smile is so bright. You can just see that your heart is just so kind. And
Oh,
this is before I knew about, the Giving Gal and your books. And I didn't even find that out till a little later because we're all meeting each other.
yeah.
But I could tell that about your heart right away.
Thank you. I feel like I was sad because I think we had been at an event before that together at Jesse's. Did you do Driveway to Hell?
I did
Okay.
with Todd.
Yes.
And
So I think you guys were there, and I remember seeing you because I thought, "Oh, she's so pretty,"
oh,
and but we didn't. That there was just so much going on, and so
there,
when we finally met at Jesse's house, I was just like, "Oh, I love you. I love your heart," and it's been great
oh,
to get to know you over these couple of years. But leading into that, and I can't even remember when you shared with me your story and, you were one of the first people, I'm going to already probably tear up, but you were one of the first people that I thought about when I started this podcast
oh,
because I think so many times, we see people and we make an immediate judgment about them, whether it is good, bad, whatever. And I look at you, and everybody can see Maureen is so beautiful. You have a beautiful family, like 4 boys. You've been married for 26 years. And when you told your story, I just thought, wow, we all have a story to tell. We all are carrying something that a lot of people never know. And I know at that time you hadn't shared it with many people. And so it was just a good reminder of like, wow, we never know what people are carrying, what people have been through, what people have survived. And so I'll just ask you to share, your only God story.
Yes, and you're right. I hadn't shared for most of my life, because I'll get to it. This, trauma, I guess I'm going to refer to as first, I was 8 years old. And for most of my life, I didn't share it, me, one on one with friends type thing, but never like publicly. Um, and at that point, when I met you and we were at that event, I didn't have any plans on sharing that. And I think we were going around in a big group and people
Mhm.
did start opening up. And I decided to say something because the group and then some of the mentors within there really helped me. And it was almost like I joined it for this thing and I didn't know it would go this deep. So
Right.
yeah, so it was very spontaneous, but I'm glad I did it. And what I shared with the group was that at 8 years old, I was in third grade and it was October, same month we're in now. And I grew up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, so you never know. October it could be snowing, but it was a gorgeous day, and it was a long time ago, so not everything's clear, but
Right.
there are some things that are so clear. I was so excited to go to the park that day with my best friend Heidi, and my mom was taking us. She'd read her book while we're playing, and this is kind of the place to be in Kenosha, like a big park. It's on top of a hill, it's fenced in, there's a fire station, and then down the stairs, there's a big public pool everyone went to. It wasn't open in October, but
Right.
a big bike track. Like this was the place to be. So we're at the park, we're on the swings, and outside of the fenced in area, there were just a bunch of wildflowers. And Heidi and I are both swinging, and I just got this idea to pick my mom flowers and surprise her. So I walked out of the fenced in area, not very far from her, but start picking the flowers. And I'm bending over, carefully collecting which colors I want to put together for my mom. And it truly was like that. It was a stranger came behind me. He was a stranger. It wasn't someone we knew, and just covered my eyes and my mouth and whispered in my ear, don't scream or I'll kill you, and just threats. But as he's carrying me to his car, and truly before I knew it, he's speeding away. And I'm looking up because I was kind of down the hill a little bit, and then he got me and took me down to the base of the hill. So the park's up on top of the hill, and I'm looking up there like there's my mom. I mean, I couldn't see her, but knowing she's up there, Heidi's there, and within, minutes, he was driving away, and everything changed. And I know now that a lot of people have moments like that in their life, whatever it might be, where things, as a child, something happened and it changed. But for me, it was a very scary moment. I just was scared for my life. He was threatening me a lot while we were driving, asking me, firing off questions and where I lived, where I went to school, and I was answering everything. And he would say, because if you don't do this, he'd threaten my life. Um, I don't know if he meant that, but of course I believed him. And so I was trying to just do what he said. And eventually he pulls the car over and I look around and there's no houses. It's just cornfields on both sides, just no people, no houses. Um, so, he we leads me far into the cornfield, and um, yeah, it was pretty much a nightmare what happened. Just assault, physically, emotionally, verbally, and I just, of course, feared for my life. And even right now, I'm like, oh, I should probably breathe because I was holding my breath, but um, was just I think I was in shock for a while, right?
Sure.
But he would leave and go back to the car, and he would say things and threaten things, and I he would go to the car and come back. So it wasn't a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think now what I can put together is he was probably going to see, did anyone find us?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we still alone or did someone discover us?
Right.
That's my guess. But I would do as he said, I would stay there and not move. Anyway, at one point when he left, I did something different. And that's when I prayed.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly, I mean, I don't know exactly, but I know I asked God, like, I'm scared. I'm afraid for my life. I don't want to die. I want to see my mom. What do I do? And all of a sudden, a peace comes over me. And I truly think what Holy Spirit, guardian angels just helped lift my little legs. And, he was that way. I went that way. And I just got to the side of the road. And shortly, not long after, a car approaches and I wave them down and they rescued me. Turned out we did keep in touch with them for a little bit. Um, I know their names, but they had told my parents that they have no idea why they were driving down that road. They they never had before, so they believed even that it was only God
Right.
that brought them down that road to rescue me.
Wow. So you pray, have a peace come over you, but then did you even have to think about having the courage to run, or was it just this like almost immediate, like you said, this angel Holy Spirit to say, run, take off? Like you didn't even have to think about it.
I do think it was, yeah, the Holy Spirit, angels, God just guiding me because I was so afraid and obviously listened to his threats of don't move.
Right.
And I listened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just was even the act of getting up and moving was something I hadn't done previously out of fear. And it was when I prayed, everything changed. Everything changed. And it's interesting because I would tell my mom about that, like, Mom, I prayed and a peace came over me, that type of thing. But it wasn't until just maybe a few years ago that I shared with my now junior at Auburn, Sean, how that I prayed and got the strength. And I always knew that, but it was something I didn't really talk about. And it was a really pivotal moment for me and for Sean because he was a teenager and
Right.
weren't going through the best time as far as communicating or talking. And that was something like he just looked at me and said, Mom, you need to share that more. And I thought, he's right. Just that it, yes, I've talked about praying before and told my mom about the peace, but sharing more of that, I think that's what changed everything for me.
Mm-hmm. Were
And
you
yeah.
I mean, it's just so incredible. And were you taught to pray? Like, were you raised in a home where you prayed? Had you prayed often? Or was it just like, I need to, like, something even came over you to pray in that moment?
So I do have a very sweet memory of I'm the youngest of four. I was 8 at the time and my siblings were, 12, 14, 16. But we grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to a Catholic school, so we would pray at school.
Yeah.
But even as a family at night, we would all kneel at the couch and say a prayer. And that was a very strong memory for me. Now that kind of changed,
Yep.
as we got older, because
Right.
kids are off doing stuff, but being in the Catholic school and having prayer as part of my life, but especially because my parents, even just that one nighttime prayer before bed, I always had that with my mom and my dad.
I think that's so powerful for parents to hear, or if there's kids or students, like the power of prayer and you knowing how to pray and you
Right.
praying and within this moment. I also think if you think about the people who you said saved your life, they had to listen also to the Holy Spirit. I'm sure, or I guess maybe I'll ask you is, a lot of times I feel like God does lead us places and we just kind of ignore it or blow it off
Right.
or like that's crazy. We have no reason to go down this
Right.
road and for them to be obedient. Did they talk about any of that, or was it just this like they felt like they needed to turn down this road and they
So
did? Or and I know
because
it's been a while.
well, and because of my age too, it was
Right.
it was I think my parents immediately trying to protect me, even though ironically I felt like I needed to protect them and be strong because I thought it was my fault for leaving. So they told my parents, my
Mm-hmm.
mom had told me.
Yeah,
So I didn't really hear it firsthand,
that
but my
makes sense.
mom had said this is what they said and that um,
Wow.
they believed they were led down that road 100% for the reason of finding me. And I do remember thinking like, wow, that's really great. And we had them over one day, and when they left, I gave them a hug and said thank you. And I mean, it was hard because I think, again, I was still like in shock of everything that happened, but I am so grateful for them.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice to continue to stay in touch with them. My parents did for a while,
Yeah.
but and I know at one point I wrote them like a thank you note or a letter just thanking them, but thank God for them.
Yeah, thank God for them. Where do you want to go from here? What do you want to share? Because, like you said, is that's when you were 8 years old, and now you're a grown woman, family. I mean, I'm going to assume it changed you. Were there challenges that you have? Like, what would you like to share?
Oh, definitely there were challenges, and I think this is where what I've learned is no matter what your story is, if there was some sort of childhood trauma, you carry a lot of weight, and it's some things that I've just learned very recently. I think there's just more known now, but even just how immediately gut issues started with me and sleep
Wow.
issues. I would have nightmares, so therefore I wouldn't want to sleep. So I'd
Mhm.
stay up all night. Well, that's not healthy, right?
Right.
But as a kid and even going into like middle school and high school, just I think manifesting so much in your gut. And I just always like I'd lose my voice all the time. And I had reflux, which we didn't know it was called reflux then, and just all these things. And I think it was truly trying to push down all the emotion,
Mhm.
right? Literally push it all down and just smile and be strong because I always had so much gratitude, and I do owe that to my parents too. Like my mom was just she would give me prayer books, positive thinking books, gratitude journals. Like she was always trying because she knew I was struggling, but I always had this sense of I'm really lucky to be alive.
Mhm.
I don't know what his plans were that day, but a lot of times I've heard from many people, you're taken from point A to point B, the odds aren't good.
Right.
So I just always felt so grateful to be alive because knowing what it's like to be in a moment where I'm like, I think I'm gonna die today.
Yeah.
But so there was always that gratitude, and I wanted to be happy, and I had parents, and I think some kids don't even have parents. There's some kids who are abused every day. So therefore, I kind of thought I should get over it.
Right.
And, because of all the blessings I had, that you're fine now. Um, and really it doesn't work that way. And so much more is known now. There wasn't really a lot of therapy or even intervention for my parents.
Right.
I mean, they tried, but there wasn't as many um, things available. I think at one point I went and saw someone, but I think I was putting on a brave face because,
Mm-hmm.
again, I felt like had I not left that fenced in area, this wouldn't have happened. So it was my fault. Look what I did to my mom and dad, which they would never feel that way, but I did.
Right.
And I think I've just recently, in the past, honestly, 3 years, realized that I still did blame myself and released that and found compassion for my younger self. So there was always the blame, the shame. I mean, shame is just so heavy and dark. Um, I like I said, I wouldn't sleep. I was afraid because I'd have nightmares. I lived in so much fear. The man was caught.
Mm. Soon
Um,
after, or was it a while,
it
or?
was it was about, and that was one thing I was thinking about too. If my mom and dad were still alive, I'd be like, now that little detail remind me. I think it was like 2, 3 weeks.
Okay.
It wasn't super
It
long.
wasn't like immediate though, like that
It
day.
wasn't immediate.
Okay.
I may be off, but I know that what would happen is they would come, my dad and the two detectives would come to school and take me out of school here and there. And I wouldn't say anything to anyone. Um, and things like this is pre 24-hour news, right? We didn't have Amber Alerts. And so I sat in front of the detectives and they sketched his face based on my description and put it in the local newspaper. Like that's how it was done. Because
Right.
again, pre 24-hour news and all the technology and things like that. So I was like, please don't put my name in the paper, which they didn't. But then I went back to the scene with my dad and the detectives, and had to show them just try to describe what he wore, what the car looked like. And at that point, like going to the police station and going through like books and books and books of mugshots to see if we could find him. Was he maybe had a had a mugshot from previous things, and just
Right.
going through all these books. So I know it wasn't immediate, but at one point, um, I remember walking down the hallway of my Catholic school, and at the end of the hallway was my dad, the two detectives, and the nun who was the principal at the time. And I just remember thinking, okay, what's going on? And they said, we think we have the man, and I needed to go and identify him in a lineup. And they were very, I mean, I was scared to death, but they were very good about, you can see him, he can't see you. There'll be 10 men, pick him out. They opened the curtain. I knew right away. I said, it's number 4. So I identified him. There was some physical evidence, and he was sentenced to 46 years in prison. So back to, yes, he was caught, but he would go up for parole year after year after year, and I'd get a statement as the victim,
Right.
through the state of Wisconsin victim witness. It
Yeah.
would go to my parents, but it just always felt like he was either going up for parole, or we're going to hear, do I want to write an impact statement? And this went on for years. And there was so much fear that I don't think I realized, because I was a happy kid too. I was
Right.
happy, and I wanted to be, normal, and I wanted have friends. I was social, sports. So it's sometimes I don't think we don't understand the effects of how much we push down and try to just get, power through until later it starts coming out. And obviously not sleeping well for a long time didn't help. And I, I joke about my first therapist was food, because I would just be
Mine
up
too.
at
I can
night,
relate to that.
and I was trying to fill something,
Hmm.
and I, so I went through many times of gaining a lot of weight and almost feeling like a protective shield because of that,
Yeah.
but then beating myself up for that. And then, losing weight like the wrong way, restrict. And that kind of went on through high school, college, and beyond.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think a lot of that was just you try to find ways to self medicate, whatever it might be. So those are the ways that affected me. And I think relationship wise, I was okay for a while and then you start dating and it just was really uncomfortable for me. I would get to a point where I'd start freaking out. But now I look back and I think there just wasn't as much known and there wasn't as many resources as we have now. But I also know how lucky I am that I had loving parents.
Mhm.
Not everyone has that, and I'm just really grateful that I had that.
Yeah.
I had them.
It's interesting you bring up gratitude a lot, like as somebody who writes about gratitude and practices it is I do think there is this misconception out there that like gratitude, especially when you're going through like more than difficult times, like you're way over, it's not just like you had a bad day, is that two things can't be like how do I want to say this is two things can't be real at the same time. It's you don't have to choose one or the other. You don't have to choose to be grateful but then still realize like, oh, I'm hurting, I'm fearful, I'm going
Right.
through trauma. Gratitude can be a tool. And like you said, is back then is there weren't all these tools and all this information that comes at us. And so my guess is your parents probably did the best that they could with the information that they had. Looking back in what you've learned now, and I know that you've done a lot to help heal and recover, and my guess is it'll probably be a journey for a long time for you. Is there any advice you would give to a parent now? Let's say nowadays, a child goes through a traumatic event. Um, you know, what would you advise them to do, maybe almost immediately, and then
Mm-hmm.
thereafter,
Mm-hmm.
if you have any thoughts on that?
Right. I do. I mean, clearly I'm not a therapist.
Right.
I always thought I was going to be one, have a psychology degree, but just from personally going through it.
Yes.
And you're right. My parents did 100% did the best they could. A lot of it came more from my mom because I feel for both of them, but I know later in life my dad and I talked about it, and I can't imagine how hard that was for him,
For his
not
dad, yeah.
feeling like he couldn't protect his baby girl, which
Hmm.
he um so I would tell them it's not their fault, and yet I didn't give that to myself.
Right.
So they
Great.
did do the best they can, and they loved me. So my
Hmm.
advice would be truly just try to talk to the kids. Let them know you love them. Let them know you believe them. Let them know they are worthy. They matter. I mean, those words that um just they are worthy, and in any way you can help them. And maybe it is therapy. I think therapy is really important. I do think I probably would have benefited from some therapy, but I also think there might be stages.
Yeah.
Maybe right away that was too young for me. I was still kind
Hmm.
of so I do think every child is different,
Yes.
but I think at some point, whether it's right away
Hmm.
or 3 months later, 3 years later, like I said here, all these years later, I
Hmm.
finally did trauma therapy. Why I didn't before, I don't know. I think it's because I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm fine. But I think it would be to basically never give up on them and
Hmm.
keep trying, because different stages are going to be different triggers. Like they might be doing okay, but if they went through something traumatic, a different stage in life, in middle school and high school. For me, once I got I got married and had my first son, Nick, I was a basket case. I wasn't sleeping at all. And it took someone, a therapist to connect it for me. I don't know how I didn't connect it, but she's like, well, you think something bad is going to happen to him,
Right.
because in my head, it was, she helped me realize my brain was telling me this was a safe park during the day next to a fire station with my friend, with my mom, and everything changed. Like my brain kind of going, don't tell me nothing bad can happen. But
Right.
I lived, and Todd traveled every week, and I really had a hard time when the boys were little.
Mm.
But by that woman acknowledging it and telling me that, the knowledge is power, I
Right.
was like, oh, okay. So then we were able to work on that. So that was
Mhm.
kind of drawn out, but I just think there's
Yeah.
no one formula, but it's continuing the dialogue, because you don't want to think, oh, they're fine, they're doing okay.
Mhm. I
You want
think,
to keep checking in with them.
yeah, you said a lot of good things. And as like was director of victim services for the state and worked with a lot of victims. I love to say survivors. I wish I would have been director of survivors,
Right.
but you're right of the words that we speak matter. The love, like I think sometimes we can overdo with a lot of things, and it's like, no, the basic things of showing love, showing up, being there, the consistency, the believing, and the repetitiveness, because it's not like you forgot that it happened, and people do tend to go on with their lives and kind of forget what you went through. But I
Mm-hmm.
also like that you talked about of the stages, and that every stage of your life there was something else that probably came up and triggered that, but then also continues as you grow older. And then finally, just like you said, is like there's not a one size fits all. And I want to transition a little bit, because I think one of the ways I've seen you take your power back is, you want to share what you do?
Oh, with
Through
teaching
Yes, yep,
self-defense,
yep, yep.
and teaching self-defense and speaking. And the speaking's kind of a newer thing, but and that all started in 2012.
Okay.
And talk about, I mean, the hundreds of little things that had to happen to make me hear about this program, Rad Kids. It's just only God could do this.
Right.
So I probably can't even go through it all because it would take so long.
That's okay.
But
Highlights.
and how sometimes I've heard you say this too, but sometimes you can look back. You may not know it in the moment.
Mhm.
Some of it I did, but looking back and going, oh my gosh, only God for all these things to fall in
Mhm.
place. It's only God. So it was 2012, and it started out sadly with a young girl in the suburbs of Atlanta. Jareli Rivera was abducted from her neighborhood playground. And, at this point, so I'm married. Let's see, Nick's about, can I do my math? Nick's like, uh,
13 years ago.
yeah, he's like 11, and Sean's 7, and Matt and Jake are 6, something like that. And I had, again, a lot of my good friends knew I'd tell them one on one, but it's not like anything I ever talked publicly about. And to be honest, it would, because I would think, well, who am I? My story doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And everyone does have a story, and every story matters. But I didn't think like my story mattered. So at that point, all these moms I knew, like from the school, and with 4 boys, and they were
Mhm.
at a pretty small, like, school that they started in 3-year-old preschool all the way through high school. You're very involved. So I
Right.
got to know a lot of friends. Like, none of them knew about this.
Mhm.
Um, and this when I heard about Shirelli, I called my mom, because that's what I would do, and I was just sobbing. It was like this secret that we had. And I just was sobbing, like, I hope they find her and I hope they find her alive. And these stories, would just affect me so much. And I was obsessed with, God, I hope they find her and please let her be alive. And who knows if I ran into people that day and might have been like, what's wrong with her? But
Right.
so I happened to be a few days later in carpool line super early, which did not happen often. I mean, it really didn't. Let me just say, like working a little bit on my own ADHD these past years, but it just was, I was so early, never was usually that early. So I had all of a sudden, I had like over almost 30 minutes to wait,
Oh,
where
wow.
usually it was pull in and I'd get
Right.
them, but this was just rare. Turn on the radio, and it's this show called The Burt Show, and they say breaking news that they had heard they found her body. So I'm waiting and just sobbing. I call my mom. I have the time to call her, and the boys were little then. They didn't really know about anything and about me. So I pull myself together and take the boys home. But I'm just like, Mom, why, why, why? Why couldn't he spare her life? Why was my life spared and hers wasn't? So the next day, or it was maybe a couple days later, again, never would have been in my car at that time. And right after carpool, I think I went to go pick up some prescriptions. Never did that before. I can't, and it was like they weren't ready. And I thought, instead of driving home for 10 minutes and going back, I'm going to just sit in my car and turn on the radio, which again, I never did. I would always just turn on anyway, turn on the Burt Show again. And they're like, because of the response of what happened with Jirelli, a lot of callers wanted to know, how can we protect our kids? So there were two men on the show talking about this program called Rad Kids. And Steve Daly founded it. Gary Martin Hayes is a well-known attorney in Atlanta. There's billboards up all over greater Atlanta. Gary Martin Hayes. But they were on because Gary has three daughters and wanted something to teach his daughters, and he did research like what would be the best program, and he did all this work to get rad kids taught at his girls' school. Um, and so Bert has them on as guests, and they're talking about this. Never would have been the right timing, but God intervened. And I pick up the phone, or I call the radio station. A producer answers, and I kid you not, I blurted out my story. I had never done that publicly. I mean, I'm on the phone with her because suddenly it wasn't about me anymore.
Right.
It just, like, I would
Mm.
have been like, well, I just said, this is Maureen Pierce. I heard them. I was kidnapped when I was 8 years old. Da da da. I need to do this. I need to do this training. I want to teach this program. And I just let it all out, and I had never done that. She ends up getting my email, asks me to email her my story. And I remember coming home and saying something to Todd like, guess what happened? And he's like, well, email her. And I did. I promise you, I never would have done it before. I would
Yeah.
have put it off. There is no way I would have followed through. But it was, I want to do this program. It was greater than me at that point. And that's why I think God, out of a horribly tragic, awful situation that shouldn't have happened, to that little girl. But all those moments that I was in the right place at the right time and heard this. And then suddenly, even though I had four young boys and a husband who traveled every week, I'm like, I'm going to go get trained for this. And so it like freed me where I was just, so I follow up with her with this email, certainly not just thinking that she was going to help me connect with them and
Right.
be able to find out about training. That's all. Because I was even like, are they still in the studio? And she said, no, they're not. So I emailed her and never ever would have done it. All right. So a few days later, I'm in the car again, and I was supposed to be meeting with someone, and we had different times. So I was an hour early. Wouldn't happen often. she's like, I have you at 3, and it was like 2 or something like that. So I
Yeah.
sit in the car, turn on the radio again, the Burt Show. They're like, we got these responses, but this one really hit us. They read my email, and I'm listening. And at first I was like, wow, I want to meet this person. She was 8 and kidnapped. And, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's my email.
Oh my
And
gosh.
at first I was just like, I just wanted to crawl into like, what is happening?
Right.
I It was all meant to be. There were so
Mm-hmm.
many feelings I was feeling. Like I said, it's too many details, but I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was like, why did they read that? But it doesn't matter, because what happened next was I went through the training. And even then, like, I tried to talk about it with Gary once. And like, I remember my lip uncontrollably quivering. I didn't really have the confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and I think part of it was that I didn't think my story mattered. And what I love through my training and now speaking about it is making sure other people know your story does matter.
Yes.
It does. Your feelings matter. Because I would say things like, well, like in my head, or maybe to my mom, well, I wasn't killed. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't gone forever. I have loving parents, therefore I should be okay. Or other people would say to me, because you can always find things that are worse. I'd
Right.
say, well, things could have been worse. I had a great, happy childhood, for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, right?
Right.
Things can always be worse. So then people would come to me and say, well, my story isn't like yours, and I can turn that back around and say, do you know, for most of my life, I thought, but who am I to tell my story? Why does my story matter? And it matters because we can all connect on those same feelings that we feel: the blame, the shame, the guilt.
Yes.
And one of the best things I did this was only like 3 years ago, is wrote my younger self a love letter.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, why didn't I do that a long time ago? I mean, I would journal, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
gratitude journal is it. I think what you do, the giving gal and gratitude, my mom did instill that in me.
Mm-hmm.
But even recently, I was like, I haven't done my gratitude journal daily.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, gratitude and prayer go hand in hand.
Yes.
Like, to me, it's my daily prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's how I want to start my day. But that's where I think my message I finally believe, can help others, because I can say, no, I thought the same thing. And everyone matters, and your story matters. And it's about truly learning to love your younger self that was so hurt. And we didn't bring up forgiveness yet, but I think forgiveness is huge too.
Yeah. Mm.
Uh, actually forgiving myself and saying, sweet girl, you did the best you could. Because I beat myself up. And I think that's what we tend to do. And instead, going back and giving ourselves the compassion
Yeah.
that we need.
And the grace and the
And
forgiveness and the things that I know you give to so many people. Um, I want you to talk about, like, going through, gosh, there's so many questions that I have. But you talk about, sharing your story and that it matters. And you and I were talking about that before we hopped on here. And I just want to say thank you again. I know, people listening today, they see Maureen telling her story, but it was a challenge for you to just even book and to tell your story here. And I say that not to make you feel bad or anything, but people, I think so many times is we let the devil get into our heads and to tell us that our story doesn't matter or that we can't do it. And we just keep doing that. And there's, you and I were talking before, and I was like, Maureen, there is somebody that's going to listen to this that needs to hear this story. And I think that's why it's so powerful we tell our stories, because I always feel like, our testimonies, and God uses everything, not just the good in our life. God uses everything. And so, He uses what you've gone through to not only to share your story and help others, but also through, your training that you've went through to train other, little girls into kids and learn how to fight in self-defense. So I want to thank you again for like sharing your story and being brave and to tell people that it's not easy. Like, that, like
Right.
it's still not easy to share after all these years.
Right.
Um, you mentioned forgiveness and forgiving yourself. Have you forgiven the man that did this to you?
I did. I did. I I have to think about it often because I can feel sometimes, not as much now, but in the past, that that anger, and I had a lot of anger and I had bitterness, and I know now even the fear was, the devil. But I learned at one point that if I holding on to that bitterness only hurt me. And it's not saying what you did, what he did was okay, but it's more letting go of it, because if we hold on to that bitterness, it's just it eats you up.
Yeah. How did you get to that point of being able, or did you have a certain moment, or, is it just this continual, or did you hit something and you're like, okay, I can no longer hold on to this?
It definitely, it wasn't one thing. I think it was stages, and I do think a lot of what I'm very grateful for and lucky is just how loving my mom was.
Mm-hmm.
And not that she came out and said that, but I think through, feeding me with prayers. And I think maybe the first time it came through was I would do little stints of therapy. I'd go in and I'd talk about everything else except that. And I do think it's important to sometimes get to the core, maybe. I mean, there's been other things that have happened in my life and some other traumatic events, but never really acknowledging that, because I'd talk about other things, and it took one of the therapists to talk about that, and that's when like just the anger and the bitterness came out, and I was realized with some help that that's only hurting me. But I wouldn't say it was like done like that. I think another big step and another big person that I know was brought into my life through God was the rad kids happened. And I taught that at my boys' school for a period of time, about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And then a dear friend of mine said, well, I want to support you and I want to go through training with you, which I think is just so amazing that Kendall did that. And she said, there's rad women too. It's like the kids is more about, I mean, we talk about things and that there's bad people out there and ways to keep themselves safe. And then we do get into some self defense, to empower them.
Right.
But rad women is going to be a little different. We're talking to older girls and women. And she's the one who said, let's go to that training. So then I got certified in that in 2015. But I really didn't do much with it. And it wasn't until back to when I met you. It wasn't until losing my dad and going through the coaching program and meeting all these people and going through exercises like, what do you want in your life? What are your goals? And I was really for the first time thinking about not just my four boys. I
Right.
was thinking about me. And I I said to Todd, I went and got certified in rad women in 2015, but here it's 2021, and I kept up my certification just by kind of helping out here and there, but I never really taught it. And they always had summer conferences for all the
Oh,
instructors throughout the country. There's and internationally, there's some in Canada and Japan. So I said, I want to go, Todd. And it was because I was in that coaching program with you that really helped me to go, what do I want?
mhm.
And I said, if I'm going to teach this, I really need a refresher and I need to go
Right.
make connections with people, because most of them are law enforcement, my fellow instructors, and they have a team. They have three, four, maybe 10 instructors, and they have a location and they have the equipment and they have a budget. I'm an independent instructor. So, Todd, I always would have felt guilty leaving other summers
Mhm.
because my boys and the mom guilt. But that program that I was going through helped me go, this is really important to me to teach again, and I need to go to that conference. The first day before the conference even started, and there's hundreds of instructors there,
Right.
I meet my friend Billy, and he single-handedly changed my life. He's, no one there knew my story, and they're all law enforcement. And even though I'm a pretty outgoing person, I felt very insecure
Yeah.
because I kind of back to the who am I? I'm just a stay-at-home mom teaching this. And
Right.
but Billy just kind of took me under his wing and said, "You're going to meet all these other instructors," and eventually just asked me about, "Well, why are you doing this?" And
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of beating around the bush. And he could tell. He's like, "Come on," but he just had a way. He passed away unexpectedly a little over about a year and a half ago, and I mean the whole community, all of us are really sad because he was that person to
Right.
so many people.
Mm-hmm.
um, but that to me is such a God moment too, that I never had gone to a conference. I would have felt too bad leaving the boys in the summer. I tell Todd, this is what I want to do. First person I meet. And he just said, I'm like, well, how do I teach? It's me. He goes, I'm an instructor trainer. Come teach with me. So
And
he
was
would teach.
he around where you were? Was he near Atlanta, or did you
No,
have to go?
no. He was in Boston.
Oh my
He was
gosh.
captain of a police department outside of
Right.
Boston, father of three kids.
Mm.
Like none of us know how he did it all, but he would travel to teach. So he was an instructor trainer, right? He
Mm-hmm.
would teach other people to be instructors and I would assist him.
Oh,
So it wasn't really me doing the class where I want to teach women and girls,
yeah.
but it was like me going through the training again.
Mm-hmm.
And he just encouraged me to tell my story at like while we were training, and therefore other people ended up opening up. And he's like, look what you're doing, look at the ripple effect. He
Mm-hmm.
was the one who said you should apply to be on the RAIN Speakers Bureau. So RAIN, I don't know
Yep.
if, yeah.
I'm familiar with Rain.
Yeah, RAINN. I applied. They have it. It was. I kept putting it off. He'd be like, "Did you do it yet? Did you do it yet?" So I'm on their speakers bureau. He encouraged me to speak, and then I did my own class. It was a few summers ago, but he's like, "Yes, you can. I'll fly
Mm-hmm.
in. I'll help you." And this is not to say that like Todd, my husband, 100% is supportive of me.
Right.
But Todd's not a rat instructor, and it was I mean, and it it was just so amazing to me. I'm sad he's gone because the world is missing an amazing guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did all of this because he cared.
Right.
This wasn't like this was just because he cared. Travel all over, try to get as many instructors as he could. And he truly did this for many people. But for me, he gave me a whole new level of confidence. And I'm just grateful that God put him in my life. Because I haven't taught in a while.
Mm.
And I just said to a friend the other day, all right, I got to get past this. I mean, my grief of losing him and
Mm-hmm.
my fear of how do I teach without him. And I know I have other friends in the program that'll help me,
Right.
but they get it. They know but it's Billy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just said to a friend the other day, I got to do this because that's what he'd want me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what I want to do. But so I'm going to get back to teaching the women and children's program, and who knows, maybe have other opportunities to speak.
Yeah, I think you will. And I love that you like took something, so tragic, but then you've continued it. I think it is sometimes we can do one thing. You did the kids, and then to keep just stepping out in faith and showing up even when you didn't want to, you're uncomfortable. Like it's easy to make excuses for not showing up. And I think too is I'm glad you mentioned Todd, because I've learned a lot of times like our husbands can be very supportive, but they can't do this thing over here, and it does
Right.
other people to do this thing over here, but
Right.
trusting and giving you that push and support and go. So this is for like the spouses out there, is to say, hey, if you need to do this or if you want to do this, I will support you, but it doesn't have to be me doing all of it. So I'm
Right.
glad you mentioned that. And I'm sorry
Yes.
for the loss of Billy. I remember when
And
you were posting it, and I know what a loss it was to the law enforcement community, but it's amazing of all the lives that he impacted and
he,
continue to carry his legacy, and like, hey, he trained you guys, and now it's like passing that on. Um, Though, as we wrap up, just anything I didn't cover that you want to touch or chat through or end on, I guess?
I do, ironically, I thought a big part of this would be me talking about my boys' faith and how they've inspired me.
Yeah,
And here we're
perfect.
almost done. And I want to no, but I really am raised Catholic. So was Todd. We raised our boys Catholic. And what has really, we talked about this a little bit, inspired me is their faith journey.
Mm,
And at first it was a little bit like they went to a different church, more of a non-denominational Bible-based church. They started with Young Life in high school, and that really lit a fire within them. So to Young Life and to all those Young Life um, in leaders out there, it it can change kids' lives without a doubt. It did for my boys. And then for Sean, especially who's at Auburn, he continued and he goes to Church of the Highlands. They'll also go to Auburn Community Church
yeah.
now and then. But to see their faith, and even though I grew up with faith and prayer, I'm not speaking for all Catholics, but I just never really did a lot of Bible study.
Right.
It was, church and you memorize these prayers, and I always I always had daily prayer, but I never did the Bible study, and my boys do that. So I'm just this it's like this whole new level of faith that they've inspired me to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal of reading the Bible in the next year and looking at scripture more, and oh my gosh, they've gotten me into worship music. And so I'm just so proud of them because it's not the easiest path.
No.
I've even seen, I was just there this past weekend, and they're not maybe doing all the parties and going out and doing those things, and that can be lonely sometimes. Or friend group changes because
Right.
they're putting Jesus first, and they're just inspiring me to go to the next level in my faith and my worship. And so I really wanted to just say how grateful I am, because even though we raised them, going to church a little bit, I'm like, that's not me. I hope we
That's
gave
only
them a
God.
that's only God. I know. I hope, yeah, we gave them some
A
foundation,
foundation, yeah.
but I'm like, that's only God to see what they're doing. And Sean's going on his second mission trip this summer. He went to Cambodia last year. He's going to Peru. Um, they work at Young Life Camp last summer. I'm just like, that's not what I was doing at their age. And I'm just so grateful to God that they have a fire in their heart for Jesus, because it's really, really inspiring me.
Mm. I love that. And I
I
love
know.
what you said earlier before we got on here, is that even though, you said you were raised Catholic, Todd was raised Catholic, the boys were raised Catholic, is you let them, I can't remember exactly how you say it, but like figure out faith on their own. Like let them go and not control them, and not, like, no, this is how we do it. And I
Right?
think that's beautiful also. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Just like how, you've had to be supportive, or is there anything, changed in your mindset where you're like, okay, wait, like they're out of the home now, they're going to have to figure this out, and it might be different than how I raised them or how we were raised.
Yeah, it definitely, I could see where maybe some, nothing against the Catholic Church, because
Right.
that's how Todd and I still go to our Catholic church every weekend. But, maybe some parents would be like, that's not our faith.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, Todd was a little bit like, where are they going? Because it was one of the few times we got together as a family and would go to the Catholic church and then, take them to Waffle House
Right.
after.
I love
And then
that.
they started going to Passion in Atlanta. And then when Sean went to it at Auburn, now it's Auburn Community Church or Church of the Highlands, he's very involved in. And it was a conversation that Todd and I had at one point where he didn't know, like, where are they going? What are they doing? And this is hard. And I went with them a couple times to Passion. And at the end of the day, we finally said, and we both agreed, thank goodness, our boys are going to praise and worship Jesus and God. I'm okay with it. And even the fact that Sean chose his freshman year at Auburn to be baptized. Now, as Catholics, you're baptized as a
Right.
baby. I suppose technically you can't be rebaptized, but I was I let that go.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I saw the joy, and after he had a lot of struggles, he said I could talk about it, but some just depression and sadness and anxiety, and to see how he 100% thinks it saved him, his faith, and to see him choose to get baptized, I'm okay with it, and I fully support him.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And thank you for, like, I'm glad we could talk about that because we started talking about that and
Yeah,
you had mentioned, which I just love how God works. Like, talk about only God because you went and watched the Mike Bellini episode that we did. And Mike Bellini's daughter was at Auburn and went to
right,
Auburn Community Church. And he
right,
was talking about that, how, her faith, like, really inspired them. And I met Mike through Jesse and Chad, and that's how I met you. And
and
I
right,
just love like how the Lord works, but then what are the chances that your children all end up at Auburn and go to the same church plus the Church of the Highlands, which I love the Church of the Highlands, and it's just like that's the God that we can serve or that we do serve, and he is a connector. And I think if you're okay if we end it here, is like all these little things in our life. It's God's in control of all of those. We serve a sovereign God, and not that he caused what happened to you to happen. But he did save you and he has used your life to do mighty things. And I think we'll continue to do that through your story. And I just want to thank you so much, Maureen, for being on the Only God podcast, sharing stories that only God could write. Hey, friends. Thank you for joining me today on the Only God podcast. I hope today's story encouraged your faith and reminded you that God is still writing our stories each and every day. If you were inspired by this episode, please share, subscribe, and tell a friend. And to stay connected with me and find out about all my books and resources and events, go to shineforwardcreative.com. Have a fabulous day.